Call this meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. This is the regular meeting of the Vader City Council. It is Thursday, June 24th, 2021. Roll call.
Donna Rogers.
Here.
Jason Daly.
Here.
Randy Hall.
Here.
Mike Parsons.
Here.
Samantha Lovelady.
Samantha did contact City Hall and she will be unable to attend.
And Mayor Schott.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mayor's report. The wastewater treatment plant update is ongoing. The dredging of the ponds is in progress to remove the biosolids. That's a very nice way of saying what they're doing down there. So that is ongoing. After that, then they'll move on to the next part of the project. The water franchise agreement. So Lewis County did deny our proposal for them to turn off the water if a sewer payer did not pay their bill. And so I am asking them, I have already asked them to reconsider that stance. And I will let you all know what they say after that, because that is obviously a big sticking point for us. Parks Board member Jenny Hyman, she did resign. She was moving out of town, and so there is a vacancy on the Park Board. And a couple other things that are not on the agenda that are hot off the presses. If you remember last meeting, the City Council approved the Cultural Resources Survey for Worden Park. This is the grant-funded survey for the RCO grant. It was brought up that maybe we had a cultural resources survey done back when the park property was acquired. The survey that was done was a geologic survey. The city had to prove that it wasn't buying a toxic waste site, but we did not do a cultural resources survey to make sure there wasn't anything in the soil. And so we did initiate that survey. It was happening today. Anyone that was driving by may have seen Drayton Archaeology out there digging some holes. So far, all they found was some broken glass and some small brick and things like that. Things indicative of, say, a hotel that was on the property years and years ago that was demolished and then cleaned up, and then all the debris was, scraped and buried under the earth when they re-leveled the property. So they're confident they're not going to find anything, which is good news. More on that as it comes. Also, the American Rescue Plan Act. This is the fancy way of saying the most recent COVID relief funds for cities. We just got our deposit yesterday for over $92,000. And so this is the first of 2 deposits that we'll get. The next one will come next year in the same amount of money. There are strings attached. We don't have to ask for permission to spend it, but we do have to spend it only on certain types of expenses. And so as we get a better understanding of what those are and what our options are, hopefully at the next council meeting we'll have some options for council as far as what they might like to spend that money on. From a high level, there are things like lost revenue recovery. So Diane did some training on how to calculate revenue over the last several years and then create trend lines and say that we didn't get as much revenue because of COVID, in the loss of property taxes and things like that. And so we can take money out for that. We can also spend money on water and wastewater improvement projects. Part of wastewater is the stormwater system. And so there is no shortage of stormwater related expenses that we could do in town. So that's great news. We could use it on that. Also broadband, but we don't have an internet company, so that wouldn't be one. So more to come on that. Diane, is there anything you'd like to say about that? You've kind of taken the training.
No, it's exciting once we get into it, what we'll be able to do. Part of the project's are described as anything that would benefit the citizens. So that's a pretty broad category, and so we'll be excited to try it all.
Yeah, I'm hopeful we might be able to pull out at least some of the expense for a new tractor, as it is a piece of equipment that does get used on the wastewater system and the stormwater system if we had a backhoe attachment. And so perhaps we could expense some of the tractor cost to that too. So we're still working on that. All right, moving on to council reports. Any council members have anything to report? Okay, hearing none, moving on to agenda approval. I do not have any other changes to the agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda for 6/24/2021 as written.
We have a motion by Mr. Daly to approve the agenda for June 24th, 2021 as written. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Parsons. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Minutes approval.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for city council meeting on 6/10/2021.
We have a motion by Mr. Parsons to approve the minutes from June 10th, 2021 as written. Do we have a second?
A second.
Seconded by Mr. Hall. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Voucher approval.
Make a motion for the voucher approval of the end of July of $11,982.65.
June? End of June?
End of June. Did I say July?
You're a month ahead. Well, a few days.
All right. Voucher approval for the end of June, $11,982.65. June 2021 total of $68,503.28.
We have a motion by Mr. Parsons to approve the vouchers as written. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Special reports. I don't see any members of the Park Board or the Planning Committee here, but I do know some updates from the Park Board. Once again, the Cultural Resources Survey was taking place. I am hopeful that at the next council meeting you should see some information about contractor selection for that work coming up, because we'll have the bid soliciting. Also, the Vader Park Board had a successful chipping event. I think we talked about that at the last council meeting, but it wasn't on the report. So that was a great event, and they're hopeful that it'll be an annual event. The Vader Planning Committee, they met this as well. They discussed the interim zoning ordinance for manufactured homes, and they that was predominantly what they've been working on right now. Hopefully we'll get more on that. Moving on to city business. Item number 1, the public hearing for the 2022-2027 6-year transportation improvement plan. This will be a public hearing to hear input from the public prior to any council action on the improvement plan. This 6-year transportation improvement plan is an annual issue item that any city under the Growth Management Act must do. So it enables us to get grants from the state for roads. So it's very important. So we'll need a motion to open the public hearing for a particular amount of time. I think we've all been down this road before. And then we'll close it after the public input. So,
I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing for the 6-year transportation improvement plan at 6:15 for 10 minutes or as needed.
we have a motion by Mr. Daly to open the public hearing for the 2022-2027 6-year transportation improvement plan. for 10 minutes or as needed. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Parsons. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I open this public hearing for the 2022-2027 6-year Transportation Improvement Plan. Now is the time for...
Do you have anything written down that we can look at, what the plan is?
It was in the council packets. It's the same thing that we've had at the council meetings prior to this. It's a list of various roads around town that need improvements and the estimated cost for it. So,
Can you see it?
sure.
Anybody?
You have an extra copy, Diane?
Yeah, for you.
I mean, a lot of cities, they'll have their transportation improvement plan will be enormous, right? Ours is a single-page list of pretty much
Okay.
2/3 of the roads in town and saying they need to get fixed. So.
Anybody else, you can look at mine if you care to, if anybody wants to look.
It's a sketch of what we're looking at.
Mr. Stamper, I didn't see you at the beginning of the meeting. Distinguished guest undercover, Commissioner Gary Stamper.
No.
Leona.
Question. So the company that's been putting the houses in, and the only ones I'm aware of at East Street, that equipment that they ran back and forth and up and down the streets, are they responsible for any damages done?
They would be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, part of the agreement, especially for any excavation work, is to, their permit requires them to restore the area to the same or better condition. So, that's...
Oh. You have nothing planned for this year, or is that on a different plan?
This is the 2022, right. So we did this last year, so there's a 2021, 2026, and it had...
Okay, so this is goes next year on,
Yeah.
okay.
Any other input from the public?
I have
Yeah.
one question. Do you have any plans to put more lights down, more lights up, like street lights, street lamps?
The council approved an extra lamp on E Street
One,
recently.
all year?
That was the only one that anyone's requested.
Oh.
The county is, I guess it's transportation.
No, G Street, they are, the other end of 6th and G, they've been requesting one forever. She's been annoying about it. She's actually come in here too and asked about having.
Oh, I haven't seen that request.
Because currently she pays for the street light that goes there.
Mhm.
So I was, that's not in the plan. I mean, you have a plan to do the street. I was wondering if you were also.
No, the streetlights aren't part of this. Just kind of an overall,
Well, this says street lights down the bottom.
what's going on. Overall, okay, that's the county one. Yeah, so the county has a plan to go through and replace all of the existing streetlights in their entire utility with LED. And so that's coming. We won't have to pay for it at all. It'll just start happening.
Oh. No,
No, not, yeah, we haven't requested anything new other than the one. Any other input?
I got a question.
Yes, Mr. Shows.
I heard they're gonna put a stop sign down by the Dollar General, a freeway stop, is that anything like?
I haven't heard anything about that. That's outside the city limits, so that would be a county issue.
Heard that but it needs one.
It is hard when you're coming off of that, when you look right towards Riderwood. Yeah, especially when in the shade there, it gets dark around the corner.
Wind lock, they come around that curve and
Yeah.
thank you.
Anything else? I'll ask one more time. Is there any other input from the public before they close this public hearing? Hearing none, I close public hearing at 6:21 p.m. Any council discussion before we move on to item number 2?
Which is the same thing, right? But we're just
Yeah.
discussing it. One thing that I noticed that we don't have on our, I know it's not a road situation, but it's a sidewalk situation. Can we put we should put some sidewalks.
We could. I mean, the council could make that a priority. There are grants available through the TIB for sidewalk repair and install. So there are grants available.
I know when we do get our sewer availability up, people are gonna want to pump roads in, and there should be some things about how the roads are built, make sure they got sidewalk on them.
And along those lines with the COVID relief funds, it seems like sidewalks could be an allowable use as well for those funds. So.
And another thing, our roads are big enough for one car. Is there no way that maybe in this kind of like situation we can extend the road 15 feet so we can pass each other without driving on the grass? I mean, there's things like coming up to Donna's house. That
If
new
we
road that we built is wide enough for a U-Go.
The 10th Street?
Yeah.
If we had
you gotta drive
a
in Randy's
sidewalk on
lawn
that,
to,
it's gonna double
pass
the size of the
somebody.
road.
And D Street is the same way, going
So-
down towards David Ivan.
Yeah.
It's
So, I mean,
that wide.
I know we have lots of right of way along the road.
Sure.
And we're adding more and more people to this town, especially coming up here, and we're gonna increase our volume on the roads. So I'm just trying to like think ahead, widen our roads a little bit before we have, before it becomes a problem. Maybe
And that
throw a sidewalk
that
in.
definitely could go on, the street improvement agenda, for instance, for next year when we do the budgets here in a few months, we could bump up the street budget to include widening existing streets if we wanted to. There's no reason why the city couldn't do that if that was a priority. Just has to be brought up and made a priority.
Like that road being narrow, is it slows people down, they go way too fast on that road.
So you like it narrow?
Well, otherwise widen it and put speed bumps.
It is narrow, but
It's wide
It's a
enough.
driveway, yeah.
well, I usually, because people have this attitude that they have the right of way, and so when they make that turn there on 10th Street and you're at a stop sign, they will just look at you like, why are you sitting there? You're in my way. And I told one lady one day, I said, it only takes a second out of your life that I always look down through the trees to see if a car is coming, and I just pull over right here until the stop sign goes. And they're like, how dare you?
All right.
Yeah, so it's a hard corner there, and they run over Randy. Randy put rocks up, but that didn't work. That didn't last very long.
So I'm just suggesting, future-wise, we need a little wider streets.
Okay.
Maybe with the sidewalk, or
Remember-
especially with the streets in this narrow way they are, people are walking down the middle of the street because there's no other place to walk their dog, or kids are, so
Well, add it to your wish list,
wish list.
and so and bring it up when we
I've
ask.
written down on
Okay.
every piece of paper, sidewalks, so I wouldn't forget.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, there's money out there for sidewalks.
and Vader's starting to develop.
Yeah.
And if we don't upgrade to meet that development, we're going to look awful. I mean, Vader just has been left behind. It's kind of a joke everywhere. And I think we need to know that's the truth. And I've lived here a lot longer than you have, so I know it for a fact.
We let it left behind.
I would
I don't like being
say
a joke.
I
I don't
would-
like people laughing and
I would-
scoffing when you say you're from Vader. They're like, oh God,
I would rephrase it. I would say that we weren't left behind because I think if anything, it was a choice of previous administrations. We just fell
I was
behind.
really trying to be nice for a change, but
We are at the end of the public hearing for the 6-year transportation improvement plan. Are there any other discussion after the public hearing? All right, hearing none, moving on to item number 2, council to consider the resolution 13-2021 for the 6-year transportation improvement plan.
Is this where we add the sidewalks?
No, this is the point where we've already brought it up to the public twice in a public hearing and submitted it to the state for SEPA review, and we don't change anything, because it's too late. Because it's already
I
been
make a
reviewed.
motion to approve Resolution 13, 2021.
We have a motion by Mr. Parsons to approve Resolution 13, 2021. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll get that sent off to the state and the county and everyone else who wants to see it. Council to confirm temporary public works employee. So if you remember, we solicited a job application in the paper and on the city website. There it is. And we got one application. And we interviewed the young man yesterday, and it was a great interview, really great interview. And so after many weeks of waiting, we received one application for our temporary public works employee position. After completing a face-to-face interview, I can say that Michael Bastido is qualified for the position. He has been providing maintenance and lawn care in and around Vader for quite some time to private citizens. Mr. Bastido is a hardworking Vader volunteer and a pleasure to work with. I'm pleased to submit him to you for your consideration and confirmatory vote.
How old is he?
22. But I don't think you can ask that on an application.
No?
Are you?
Well, they
Are
have to
you?
be at least 18 years old
Right.
to work here. That's why I'm asking, is he old enough?
He is old enough to wield
Okay.
a weed eater.
That's good.
Has John talked to him?
Yes, John was on the interview team.
Okay. He agreed with your interview?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, Michael volunteered during the Parks Board chipping event, and he actually, not just on Saturday, but throughout the week, he helped John pick up all the branches around town and load them on the truck, and so John's already worked with them and was very pleased with the young man.
No brainer.
I make a motion that we hire Michael.
We have a motion by Mr. Parsons to hire Michael Bastido. Do we have a second?
I second.
Seconded by Mr. Hall. Any further discussion?
Yeah, how much do we pay him?
If you remember, we approved it at $14 an hour.
No, I don't remember, but okay, 14,
$14 an hour, 16 hours a week,
16.
2 8-hour days.
That's cheap.
Is that all? I mean, what does he actually get accomplished in 16 hours?
You can mow a lot of city grass and weed eat a lot of lawns and
How
dig a lot
about
of
those
ditches.
ditches on D Street and 10th Street and that kind of stuff?
Well, maybe John can work on those if he's out mowing the park.
Well, I'm kind of,
We get a lot done in an 8-hour day, especially 2 back-to-back.
Especially when you're 22 years old.
well,
A lot
it's
more
just
than I
that
can do.
there's so much stuff that needs to be done that's been neglected for many, many years too. And that's why I'm just curious why he's only for 8 hours.
well,
or
it's-
16 hours.
It's what we proposed at the last council meeting, and council approved the advertisement for those numbers.
And that's fine. I'm still asking the question though. Things can change. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure. I just would like to see some of this stuff caught up, especially those ditches on D Street and 10th, because D Street, that water stands there all the time. And it, there's mosquitoes, which are,
I went down and looked at that, but that's not.
That's
we can
not
talk about
what?
it later. It's not
No.
that's not the point right now.
it is the point, we're talking about hiring somebody to do this work, so, okay, we'll wait till we get to the elected official comments.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Further discussion on hiring Mr. Bastido. Hearing Ms. Sandra Hunter.
I just wanted to put in my 2 cents. I had the opportunity to work with this young man, volunteering, putting the chips down, very courteous, hard worker. I would hire him to do anything for me. Very nice young man. Not that he needs my 2 cents, but that's my 2 cents.
Hey, everyone needs a little praise. All those in favor of the city hiring Michael Bastido for the temporary public works employee position, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, council to discuss the right-of-way encroachment permit ordinance. So we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and this is kind of a first draft of it. And so I wanted to make sure council got a chance to look at it. We cannot pass this ordinance at this time. We'll need to pass the fee schedule first. Anyone need a copy of the encroachment ordinance? There will be a fee associated with this, and so it'll need to be on the fee schedule, and so we need to pass the fee schedule before we pass this ordinance. But if there are any changes that council would like to see, plenty of time to get that information in.
I have it, okay.
Yes, Mr. Radcliffe.
You're going to charge somebody to use their own property? Is that the?
No.
Like I own 700 and something feet of 6th Street, and it's fenced to the middle of 6th Street. That's an 80-foot street there, and it's fenced right in the middle of it. So, are you saying that I would have to, which by the way is not going to happen, but I'd have to pay the city to keep my fence there?
So the idea is that, right, so there's right-of-way, right? So there's city property and private property.
Right.
So
You have a right-of-way over top of my property.
no, right-of-way is city property. Just because it's city property, it's not your
I pay
property.
taxes on it.
You shouldn't be, because if you look at the county the PATS system, your acreage shouldn't be based on the right-of-way whatsoever.
Well, it is. So
Well, then you should talk to the county because they're doing it wrong.
You have a right-of-way that's over top of.
We're not talking about easements, we're talking about right-of-way.
Right,
They're different.
I understand that.
Okay.
So you don't actually own the land. You have a right-of-way. You have the right to put a road there.
Right, and so we could come in and put a road in there today and not even ask anyone's permission because it's our
Right.
property.
Absolutely, you have the right to put a road there.
Right.
But until such time, I have the right to fence it, dance naked on it.
You do
put a road-
not have the right to fence a right-of-way
Well,
because it's a
where is it?
public access.
Well, but I have, no, not until you actually exercise your right-of-way.
You are incorrect.
Well, I've actually asked this before, and there's a state law that says I do. I have the right to use that property until you have that.
I don't believe so.
Okay, do you have an RCW you can cite?
I don't have an RCW I can cite. However, in drafting this ordinance, the attorney was consulted. How about this? RCW 3527-370, the city has the right to control its streets and right-of-ways. Right there, it's in the
Right,
ordinance.
Did you actually read that? It doesn't say it gives you the right to the land until the time that you actually put a street in. Right, you don't.
So the whole point is, okay, so the whole point of this ordinance, we had someone come to the city and says, I have unused right-of-way behind my house, right? So we have these areas where there are no streets.
You have lots of them.
Lots of them. Maybe there used to be a street decades and decades ago, but there's not now. Right now, it's just bushes. There's no roads at all. This area backs to their house. They mow it. They maintain it. He said, can I build a fence there? I'd like to put a fence across this fence in the right-of-way. That way my kids can play in it, because I don't want to run out in the street. So basically, he wants to use it as an extension of his personal property. So I consulted the attorney, and she says, no, you can't do that unless there's a permitting process involved, which is where this comes from. So someone would say, would come in, they'd ask for a permit to do this, there'd be an annual renewal, and they could build something that is not a permanent structure. So a fence is not a permanent structure, something with a foundation would be. And so the idea is that they could temporarily use it until such time that the city needed to access it and put a road through there. And we could ask for them to take the fence down at any time. So it's a legal way of letting people do what they're already doing.
But our fence has been there for 100 years. And.
It's not your property.
What?
It's not your property.
Well, I disagree with that because I have looked into that before because the previous mayor, may he rest in peace, was actually walking on it at one point, and but he was crossing our property to get to it. And I objected to it, so I had to look into it. And our attorney, which I'm sure went to a similar school as your attorney, said, no, you own that property, they have a right to cross it and to put a road there. That's it. They have a right to put a road there, a right, but not the land underneath it. So that's when I went and we had it surveyed.
That doesn't really make sense.
Well, it does, because once you take that road away, it reverts back to the person I own to the middle of that road, just like the Russian guy on the other side. He uses it, he actually took all of his trees down on his side. So, and if I want to take the trees down, I can take the trees down, which, by the way, we have. So, I think that's something that needs to be looked into further, because until you exercise your right of way, it's, you have no, you shouldn't have any right to that property.
I'll bring up that concern to the attorney.
Okay.
It is interesting.
And I'll do the same.
Barring that, input from the council on this. At the last meeting, council seemed thought this was a favorable idea, and they wanted to see what it would look like.
So, let me ask this question and play devil's advocate. So, say, for instance, Cindy's property. It has that 6th Street area, or the easement, or whatever it is. Actually, we'll just go straight to my property. On the back side, on the east side of my property is Park Street.
Right, between your property and Alpine Court. Yes.
There's Park Street.
There's the unused easement, or excuse me, unused right of way back there.
Unused right away. So I am concerned about all the trees and trees falling and so on and so forth. So I've been cleaning it up. Should that fall on the city to do?
Perhaps. I don't know off the top of my head.
Because if I can't use it and those trees are falling, causing damage, it's the city's responsibility, correct?
Perhaps.
Perhaps, okay.
I don't know.
So, we got into an argument with this several years ago with
Did we?
the other city attorney, not you.
Oh.
This was many,
Well,
several
I don't
years ago.
remember.
No, but there was this was all brought up because, you know, like my place, my front yard's really this wide. The rest of it belongs to the city. But one gentleman in particular had trees on the city right away, and he was having to maintain those trees because they were making a big, huge mess and all this kind of stuff. And the attorney that we had at that time said that it is up to the owner of the property to take care of the city right away and to maintain those trees, and the city wasn't going to do it. Now, I don't know where that legally comes in, but he was pretty adamant about it, and they never would help that man take care of those trees. You know, well, I've got one in my yard that is, it just breaks limbs all the time, and I would love to see it gone, but it belongs to the city.
Okay. And that kind of ties in with what Cindy was saying too. So
Yeah, so I don't
it is
know
an
if-
interesting question.
I was told it's the property owner's obligation. You know,
could be
if
one
I
of
don't mow
those-
that lawn out in front of my house, you know, it's gonna
Could be one of those
yeah.
urban legend, wives' tale things
There you
that
go.
we all believe. So you can get
Well, that's just
clarification.
it. I'm just saying, this has been brought up before, and that's what a prior attorney had said, that the property owner, if you want it cleaned up, you're gonna have to do it
We can get the
yourself.
answer. Cindy? Oh, Leona, what's up?
Just a point that my parents had an issue with a tree from the neighbor's house that came down and did some damage. And it was not the neighbor's responsibility to cover that damage because it was considered an act of Mother Nature.
Okay.
So that might be something you want to look into, that it's not anybody's responsibility or fault. It's just an act of Mother Nature, and your insurance will cover the damage.
Only if the owner didn't know that there was an issue with the tree.
Correct.
If they knew, then they're held liable, yeah.
See, and I've got a couple in that area. I have a couple trees that are leaning, and I've got to figure out how to take them down. But then every time I start to do it, I think, well, this isn't even mine. So,
Yes.
what's the purposes, what's the harm of allowing somebody to put up a fence? And I'll use Lois Wilson, or whatever her name is now. Her husband put up a fence on 6th Street to keep the little small people from running across. What's the harm allowing them to put up something that's not permanent, a fence, and letting them utilize it and take care of it until such time that you actually use that right of way? Why would you want them to
Nothing,
charge
which is why we're talking about having a permitting process for it.
Why
That way
charge
there's-
them anything?
That way there's a legal way of doing it.
Why charge them anything?
Well,
You know, and why even bring this up? What's the point of this, other than just take another $75 from somebody every year for the rest of their life?
the point of it is you're not supposed to use right of way for your personal use. That's the point. And so people are already doing it. So this gives people a legal way of doing something they're already doing.
To me, that seems like you're also stopping them from, I mean, it's something that's temporary. You can take a fence down.
Right. So how about this? So in this ordinance, it takes care of a situation where, say, the unused right of way is right here in the middle, and there's homes on this side and homes on this side. What happens when this person decides to build a fence right up against someone else's parcel, and then person number 2 comes into City Hall and says, well, I wanted to do it. Why did he do it?
You own it to the middle of the street. That's usually what, at least in
Actually, not necessarily.
Well, a lot of, they'll say you own to the middle of the street, and like our fence is right in the middle of 6th Street. And apparently at some point the Dermanovskys decided that was the middle of the street, of 6th Street. They put their fence up there. And the person on the other side, the Russian guy that lives in Oregon, I mean, obviously he didn't care. And they ran cattle on it. So what's the harm of allowing them to fence to the middle of the easement, middle of the alley, middle of the right-of-way, not easement?
I think it actually gets more technical than that because, for instance, again, that easement on the side of my property, when I got my land all re-surveyed and done, the surveyor said, do you realize that, because I thought it was the half also, and he said, do you realize that the people on Alpine Court, their property line is that? The easement came off of your property completely. So if that's ever vacated again, it would fall back onto my property, not half to them and half.
Was that an easement or a right-of-way?
It's a right of way, I guess. It's a street.
Okay, yeah, that's right of way.
Yeah,
Easement
it's a
is
right of way.
right. An easement, you're allowed to run, say, utilities through there, but you don't own the property.
Yes.
Right, they're different.
So if it gets vacated, the way he was explaining it, it's not shared half and half. It's all the way to the other side. For instance, on that one.
On that one, on your specific
On
one?
mine
Because
specific
it came all off of your property.
Yes.
Right, so, and you're maintaining it.
For the most part, kind of, but not a lot.
And you're
That's my last section of.
probably utilizing it in some way, or whatever, access to the back or whatever. Somehow
No.
you're using it.
You can't get through it. I mean, it's so overgrown.
So in this permitting process, council wanted to notify all the neighbors prior to anyone being issued a permit. And so what happens is someone comes in and says, I'd like to use the right of way. This is the section I want to use. This is what I'm going to use it for. The city, similar to a variance, would notify all the local property owners that are adjacent to that right of way, and then not take any action on the permit for 2 weeks until to give other property owners a chance to come in and say, I also would like to use part of this easement. And in that case, then they could split it up. That way, after the ordinance was passed, there wouldn't be a race to see who could get all their easements first. Or, right of ways access first.
With property owners that just used what was in front of their property or attached to it or whatever.
Right. Well, a case where maybe the right of way is adjacent to two homes.
Also,
In that case, it would give folks an opportunity to split the use. So, and everyone be notified prior to issuing the permit.
This came came up before when you guys did that to A Street, and Joe was still here. The issue of that extra 15 feet or whatever it was, where you moved the sidewalk out on A Street.
Oh, during the A Street renovation.
Right,
Okay.
and at that point, I don't even know if it was the same attorney, but at that point, that use of that property to the sidewalk reverted back to those property owners. And Jill confirmed that at the time, said, yes, the use of that property to the sidewalk reverts back to the city, to the property owner adjacent to it. Because I specifically asked that question because we have the A Street property, and we can use up to the sidewalk. And so,
This is non-permanent structure.
right, well, yeah, it'd be a fool to put something up there. I have to-
Right, you can't build something permanent in a city right of way. So even if you had
But I could use
40
that
feet of
property.
40 feet of grass up to the sidewalk, if the right of way comes 30 feet up, you wouldn't be able to build anything in there.
Right, I'm not saying building, but I have the right to use that, because I specifically asked that, because I knew that I wanted to put a bench or a tree or whatever. I have the right to do that to the sidewalk. And that was confirmed through the city attorney, whoever that was at the time, whenever A
But-
Street was done.
But the city still maintains that, right?
He still mows it, but that is.
He mows it and then we planted the trees there.
Those trees are actually back a ways, but they're not,
It's in the right of way.
but
I'll-
they're dead now, but.
I'll get the answers to those questions. It's
Okay.
the same question.
And the same with the A Street, because apparently the way it's worded, I can use up to the sidewalk. And you move the sidewalk.
I know what you're saying. I'll get answers to it.
Okay.
So barring any unforeseen legal issues with the questions that have been proposed, what does council think about this so far?
Well, I'm curious, what's the fee gonna be for that?
It hasn't been set yet.
Well, what do you think it's gonna be?
Oh,
I know Cindy said something about
He's
75.
he's the mayor, we're the city council, so we make the fee and he holds it.
I don't have all the numbers
Well, I know,
memorized.
but he usually comes up with numbers, but I don't think this should be some, I mean,
The idea was that it wasn't going to be something that was going to prohibit or discourage people from being able to afford it. That's for sure.
$5 sounds good to me.
Are you gonna,
I don't,
Oh, let me look. It's on the fee schedule.
are
Just
you
send
gonna
it.
collect this every year?
So there'd be an initial permit fee and for the application, and then there would be an annual renewal fee, similar to like the process the city uses for dog tags and business permits and things like that, where we send out a notice, hey, the end of the year is coming up, there'll be a renewal fee, and it was just something to fairly low. I think it was $25 or
It's on page 13 in the fee schedule.
13 on the fee schedule. Thank you, Diane.
$750? Are you people high?
The fee schedule is not set yet. Some of these numbers are wrong. That's why it's not it's not up for council vote.
that's ridiculous. No, who come up with that number? I mean, seriously.
Some of these fees are copied from county, so you
Here we
can
go, yeah,
complain to
okay.
Mr. Stamper about their fees.
Yeah,
I complain about them all the time.
that's awful.
Talk to him.
Okay, I'm thinking $5 myself. I mean, this is not a big issue.
So, yes, some of these fees are not the proper ones yet. They're just placeholders, copied from City of Rushton or something like that.
Well, I have this one from Lewis County. It's enough to scare you to death.
Yeah, that's not the fee.
So are you gonna, somebody at some point gonna go around all the city unused streets or actually used streets and figure out who all has stuff on I mean, how's that gonna work? So, I mean, you'd have to come up to my house, good luck with that, and ask me for money.
Well, there's no push to go around and look at what people are doing wrong unless someone comes to a city council meeting and announces it to everyone that they're doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong. I saw her.
So
Yeah, 'cause we
The-
mow it.
the idea is it allows people that want to do it legally and a way to come in and do it legally. Similar to, say, the RV, the temporary RV living issue that the council has been talking about. People are doing it anyway, so we want to be able to have a way for them to do it legally and make it accessible and not cost prohibitive.
So you're not gonna actually go around and ask the people.
I don't have time for that. I'm on record saying I don't have time for that.
It's on page 3 of the proposed ordinance, it's item 15.14.050.
What ordinance?
So existing uses, that one?
The proposed ordinance for the town.
Well, being you made that statement, Joe, about we want to make this easy for people to live in RVs in town, don't we have an ordinance against that? I mean,
No,
Vader
no.
already looks like an RV park.
No. I was using the RV thing as an example. This is about the encroachment permit process, not the RV issue.
Well, I think the
So-
RVs are an issue, but
Does that, what she just brought up says that ones that are already doing it don't have to buy a permit? Is that what that means? What,
Which one, what did you say?
15.14.050?
She's actually talking about there's a section in the ordinance that mentions that. I'm not sure if that 15, what number was it? 040?
Yes, 14.050.
Yeah, there was like a disclaimer at the end. Right, 050. An encroachment permit will not be required for any existing use of any public right-of-way, street, sidewalk, or other public place. However, the fact that a permit is not required does not vest the use or prevent the city from taking action to abate or remove the use. Owners seeking a temporary commercial use of city right-of-way must obtain a permit before the use begins.
That's commercial use.
Council, any other information?
I just wonder if people won't complain if that isn't unfair to the people who now have to get a permit. If people are already using it and you're saying okay to that, but anybody else, you gotta pay for it. It doesn't sound fair to me.
Okay.
Sounds fair to me.
Well, good for you.
All right.
So we gotta start somewhere.
I can pose.
Okay.
Exactly. You know,
I can pose that question and get a clarifying answer for you.
Well,
Like all those new phone deals for new customers.
Okay. Any other council input?
So, when are we supposed to sit down and go over this and fix it? Who's gonna fix it and then we're gonna approve it? Somebody else is gonna do it, or?
Well, I'm asking for your input so that we can get those changes into it.
I know, but this is quite a bit just to sit here tonight and
Okay.
scan through and,
The council it's not up for approval tonight.
well, I'd like a little time to go through it myself,
Absolutely.
because it's a.
Take your time and you could
Okay.
send City Hall an email with your input or wait till the next council meeting.
Are we going to set a time limit to be able to do this? So we can all, the council members, go through it and make notes about which ones they want to, I mean,
Sure.
are we going to discuss it again at the next council meeting?
I can absolutely put it on the agenda at the next council meeting for discussion only.
Okay. Yeah, because
If that makes you comfortable.
It does.
Okay.
Well, it does me. I don't know about the rest, everybody else. You got anything to say about it, or what do you want to do?
yeah, let's take time to look at it. There's a lot of numbers in here.
Okay. Any other discussion at this time? Yeah, it's not a pressing issue. There's no rush. So, okay. Very good. And I have those the notes here for the questions. I'll get those answers too. All right, moving on to number 5, council to discuss the updated Vader fee schedule resolution. So if you know, we've been throwing around this updated fee schedule for a long time. This is what we're looking at right now. These numbers are not firm, which is what we just saw in the with the encroachment permit process. So we're still working on these. I believe that in your packet there was a comparison with Lewis County's fees as well as Winlock's fees.
I didn't see Winlock.
I only saw it for the county.
Oh, then we always said the county one. We have one with Winlock as well. But that's where we started for comparison, so that we definitely wouldn't be higher than any of those, and we don't actually need to be because our overhead is lower.
So do you have Winlock?
I'll get it from Stephanie.
Yeah,
Okay.
Stephanie has it. Yeah,
Yeah, I'd like to look at Winlock.
and then we can go through and compare the two.
Lewis County is way out there.
Yeah, and then the latest email that was flying around about it was that they were gonna. A lot of them needed to come down because we didn't need to have our numbers quite so high, or even close to it. And
Well, how is Stephanie figuring this? Are we, because when the inspectors and whatever, all of the engineers and that planner bill us, you know, you don't know exactly each time how much it's going to cost. Sometimes they can spend an hour on something, sometimes it's 2 or 3. And
right,
so how are we getting a base?
Well, because we've been doing this for a while now, and we've gone back and looked at the fees that we've been charged from the professionals for these different things, and she's created averages so that as a whole we won't lose or make money on it, because in the end it's a service. It's a service to the citizens, right? And so we've had input from the building official, we've had input from the attorney, we've had input from the planner. So we've had all our professionals look at this, and we've compared them to actual costs that the city has incurred from it, and that's what this is being based on. And then also cross-referenced it with the other local jurisdictions that have their own building departments.
Yeah, because we really don't have one. You know, we're nothing like Lewis County, you know, where you have the different departments and we definitely don't have a planning committee that's capable of doing any of this stuff. So who's this going to be up to?
Who's what?
Well, I
what's
don't
up
know.
to?
What kind of a program are you going to get going here?
It's the same
Where
thing
these-
we're already doing,
just whatever.
just with different fees. We already have a fee schedule. It's just not comprehensive enough for what we're doing, and it's not accurate. It was based on assumptions, but now we can base it on actual facts. The latest fee schedule we have was done a few years ago.
Yeah.
Joe, one of the things that we've not done a lot, you can have a workshop prior to your meeting and outline, take a look at the fee schedule and then adjourn into your regular meeting so you don't have to have it on a different day. We've done that the past 2 things, so then you bring up whatever you want to bring up and put an agenda together so you can look at it. You give all the council people a chance to look and review it and then come with some proposals when you know, they don't have to be very long, you know, as far as you want to. I'm sure there's some that you think that are fair, and there sounds like there's others that are not, so.
Yeah.
We've had to do, we've done that in the past too, so.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that input. Once again, this is not up for a decision tonight. It's for input, similar to the other one, and so obviously you could take more time to look at it and highlight things and bring them to the next council meeting.
I would, because I'd really like to, and I have to say I've been remiss in doing this, is really looking at what they're charging us in different times. I mean, I see the bills and I see what they're charging, but if they're going over that, how are we coming out on the other end? Are we breaking even, or where are we going to get the overage from? Do we just keep charging the people that are building? I mean,
Yeah.
when I look at this thing, I would never in my lifetime, I'll buy me an old RV or I'll never build a house. My God, it's unbelievable.
Mhm.
It's horrible. Yeah.
So,
But anyway,
okay.
yeah.
So,
I just want to add that over the last year and a half, Stephanie has tracked all of the expenses, all the permits, the fees that were paid, and oftentimes we are losing money. Crazy. And so that's why it generated the idea, we need to update this, at least the building permit part especially. And so that's how she's worked, like Joe said, looking at Lewis County for reference, other cities for reference. They're doing the actual cost of the charges for an inspection, for fee, plan review, all that. And then there's a small administrative cost that's being added for the time that it's been done in the office. And so all of it is valid in that they've been put together. The numbers might not be correct, but you guys can adjust that. But a lot of work's gone into this preparation and getting it together where it is now.
Yes, my question is, I'm certainly not an expert on this, but it's, how do you go about this when, like a plan review? You have no idea what that can turn into, depending on it. So how do you make sure that you get the right amount of money that's going to cover that cost until after it's done? Do you charge the builder after?
I believe when you go through there, you'll see some sections that say or actual costs, right? So the fee, the minimum fee is this plus actual costs. So if, for instance, someone comes in and starts a permit process for something, and then our city engineer puts time into it, and then that person comes in and says, well, I changed my mind, I'm going to do something different. Like, all right, well, now we have to send that back to the city engineer. Obviously, that initial permit fee wouldn't be enough to cover it. And so that, or additional costs would. And you'll see that as you go through there.
Okay. Yeah.
There's also the ones, though, that are like cookie cutter, that are just there, and he can look at it and go, oh, this falls in line with everything. It's a nice, easy, simple. There's your check mark, and off they go. And so that one,
Well, those
he's
are
only
kind
doing.
of like a baseline thing, though. I mean,
that's what
it is,
they're
yeah.
doing, is the averaging. So,
But I'm trying to figure out how we're going to do, when they go into those extensive plan reviews and more inspections than what they would normally get. How do you bill these people for that, or instead of just one particular, okay, this is what we're going to charge you for this, no matter what.
Yeah, and you'll see it in there.
Okay, that's what I just want to make sure. At least we break even.
Yep.
Okay.
Further discussion at this time? If not, that's fine. There's once again, we've been waiting on this for a while. There's going to be an update coming, and so there's plenty of time for council to give feedback on this. Okay, hearing none. Moving on to item number 6. Council to consider vacation carryover cash out request for Mr. William Wilson, our wastewater treatment plant operator. So it came to the attention of Diane that Bill wasn't taking his vacation in previous years, and so he's accumulated quite a bit. In fact, he's accumulated so much that if he were to take all the vacation, we'd be without a wastewater treatment operator for an extensive period of time. And so it is in the employee policy that he can and we can cash out a portion of his vacation. However, as you saw, it was for over $1,000 worth of vacation time. And so it comes up to councils to make that decision on that expenditure. It's not an issue for us to do it, to pay for that, but it is an extra expenditure, so council does need to vote on it.
So it is in the employee policy that he can do this.
I believe that was copy and pasted onto that document that you got right from the employee policy. Is that correct, Diane? Yeah.
Okay, so, is there like a limit or something we can put on this before they get so out of hand? You know, like
Yes.
20 years of vacation we gotta come up with?
Yes, and when I started in 2020, he already was over the limit, it's 2 weeks. And he was interpreting that as like 80 hours, which is 2 full weeks, but it's 2 weeks of his number of hours he works. And so he had accumulated 81 hours, which is, for him, he works 15 hours a week. That's, you know, I can't do it all in my head.
6,
Thank
7.
you. And 6 weeks, and so we can't have him be off 6 weeks, plus he also gets another almost 3 weeks that would have him off like a third of the year. So, anyway, so the option is for him to cash it out and bring us back in compliance with our personnel rules and all that as well.
And so I think that the root cause of this was that, you know, prior to 2020, there wasn't a very good tracking system in place, and that's been corrected, and employees are being encouraged to take their vacation as it accrues.
Okay, so if they don't take it though, is there a limit on what they're going,
They can only.
we would allow
2
them?
weeks.
2 weeks is all. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the updated employee policy that we passed last year, where we got a grant to update that is in there.
Okay, but it just was overlooked, I guess.
Well,
Something.
the
For all this
vacation
time done.
his vacation accrual came before that.
Yeah.
He
And
did
so-
not take a vacation day until 2020.
Okay, so you want to cash him out for that, how much money is it?
$1,200 worth of
$1,200.
vacation time.
And then we're done with that, we're not doing that anymore.
Apparently, all the other employees like to take their vacation.
Yeah, even the ones that haven't earned it yet.
So,
I make a motion that we do the cash out request for William Wilson.
we have a motion by Mr. Parsons to approve the vacation carryover cash out request for Mr. Wilson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hall. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That is the end of the city business. Moving on to public comment.
Am I going up there or am I?
So Bob can hear you.
So, I'm not sure what the.
So we'll be recorded, though.
Excuse me, sir? The city used to have an ordinance, and I couldn't actually find it anymore when they've changed it, about using jake brakes in town. And, well, none of you live up there, but up by our house, when the log trucks come through, they put on the jake brakes or something that makes a really bad sound, and they come screaming into town at 50 miles an hour. And it's not only loud, but it's also, they're coming in too fast. So I'm not sure if that ordinance still exists. I couldn't find it, but if it does, I'd like somebody to maybe put the sign back up that says no use of jake brakes. And I'd like the sheriff to maybe sit his happy butt in our driveway once in a while at 6 in the morning and look at those people coming and going. It's always at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, they're going 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour up and down that street. There's one little Honda that God only knows what he's doing. But he's just screaming up that hill. And then usually at quitting time, 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, it's the reverse. So we're getting more and more people in town. There's a few kids up there, not bright ones because they're out by the street. But, you know, they're down by G Street. And, you know, one of them, a really little one, was right by the street. And she's got the life expectancy of about 15 minutes. Well, I mean, you know how fast they go up and down that street? So maybe you guys could sit up there on, what is that little street that's on the side? F Street? I Street? Maybe sit there or in our driveway or something and watch these clowns come up and down the street. Or at least listen for they don't enforce ordinances, but maybe put that sign back up that says no jake brakes allowed in town.
who took it down
Yeah.
anyway?
I know, I remember it always being there
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that,
But that's a state sign.
That's what I was gonna say, is that this, because the highway, all of it is the state.
They maintain the signage, but
Right, but it's city limits, so,
You have to have permission to put a
Well, I
sign
think
on
it
the
says
state road.
compression brakes.
Compression brakes,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
we can make that happen.
It's something to let them know.
Yep. Other public comment? Mr. Stamper, do you have something? Usually you do.
Usually just a couple things. First, we're still working on the ARP funds, so okay. And we still haven't got clear guidance from the Treasury's Department yet, so we think that we know where we're gonna be, but it's gonna take a little while, because you're going to get audited to the 10th degree on this stuff, so you have to be careful like every other person using this money. So one of the good things, though, and I think the county ended up with about 15.7 million. So what part of those funds is obviously we have to use, public health is a big one for us. So we're going to have to set aside some of that money for public health. But on the other hand, infrastructure, as most of this money is going to go for. And we're doing something that I think is really going to be pretty helpful to the entire county. And this includes the cities. Going through the EDC, we have identified, we've put overlays on all the projects within Lewis County. And I believe there's probably close to 700, the last I heard. We had a meeting. We meet once a week and talk about this stuff. So we are going to try to leverage some of the money that we have, some of the money that you have, when we can apply for some of the other federal dollars for grant purposes, so we can leverage that money, because as you know, a lot of times grants based on, how much you can contribute, whether it be at 20%, 15, some of them pretty high. So we're trying to do that specifically. So we're going to be in contact with the cities. We'll get the EDC director up here, and so so we're just, we're trying to do all we can to support all the projects we have in the county. So is everyone going to get everything? No, probably not, but at the same time, there's going to be a prioritization of some of these projects. So you're going to be hearing about it, and we'll get someone here. I'll ask Richard or whoever that may be to make sure that we get down here, and maybe even before a regular meeting, where start a little bit early, and then he can kind of go over a few things there, exactly what's going to go on. So we're going to be very transparent and try to get all the information out there, so as much as we can, to make sure, and then if the cities need help, possibly we'll be able to do that. And I know that we're going to be, one of the things too, we know there's probably going to be, it sounds like to me, we got a lobbyist back in DC, and he's in pretty regular contact with us. It sounds like they're getting real close to another stimulus package of 1.2, I don't even know how much, a lot of money.
Just the infrastructure package?
Yeah, the infrastructure. Okay. So, and it's already identified what they're going to be. So there should be, we don't know how that's going to be divvied up. My guess is it's going to come into the state, and then we're going to probably have to identify different projects, and then make sure that we're there in front so we can utilize some of these funds. So anyway, so that's kind of where we're at right now. Lots of things going on at the county. One of the things too, and we got the Sheriff's Department here represented. One of the things, there's been a lot of House bill and Senate bills passed that's really going to affect, policing, law enforcement, but also the bottom line on that, because of those restrictions now on what they can and can't do, our court system is probably going to lose about $1.5 million this year from fees. And they usually are always in the black, because they're able to collect the fees from people who violate laws and this and that. Well, that's probably not going to be the case. So we're going to, we're all going to be challenged. And I know the Sheriff's Department in particular is looking at, I know they're looking at body cams. They're probably going to get those, specifically. So just for protection purposes, so liability issues. So lots of things going on. I'll be back if I have any news for anything earth-shattering. I can always contact Joe if something comes up there where we can utilize something to support Vader and all the other cities. On the one thing you were talking about, right-of-ways. The county, we have, for example, if, telephone companies, PUDs, every 5 years we grant right-of-ways to all these different companies, the utilities and things like that. So, and we deal with, some of the same issues, especially in unincorporated towns, where people will just decide to park their cars, wherever they may want to, but actually, technically, you're not supposed to do it. And so we know that there's a, whatever the center line is, I know that it varies from place to place. So counties never really got too involved with that, but someone mentioned the tree. I think you guys were talking about trees. And we've been sued before, by the way. The county has, because a tree fell across someone's, what was it? It was their car and the horse trailer, I think. Thank God there was no horses in there. But it was already, the problem though is already identified as a danger tree. If you come to me, if Mike comes to me and said, hey, Gary, I've got a danger tree and it's, it's on county property. Well, that sets the wheels in motion. And if we don't do something with that, we are going to be liable for that. Now you're right, if it's a windstorm or some freak thing where it's an act of God or something, then that's a little different story. But if there's a tree, we've got some in Packwood right now, got three big ones right on county right-of-way, and they're huge maples that need to be taken out because the property owners around there has identified it, told us about it, and actually the fire department. So Lonnie told us about it. So we need to get those out of there because now the clock's ticking. We hope nothing happens, but it will ultimately be the county's responsibility. And we've been sued, before, and there's over a number of cases where trees have come down. Matter of fact, it was on Forest Service property. We got sued because we did the road, which is a freak thing. And so anyway, people are going to sue. That's just the bottom line. And in government, they're going to go after government. We get sued a lot, more than we should. But at the same time, that's the way of the world. So you always have to be pretty careful on that. And I think the fee thing, the only thing as far as asking to be able to put a fence on right-of-way city property, I think what that will do, and again, the fee thing, you guys are going to have to talk about that, but I think that will give some protection to the city. If something were to happen where you filled out the permit, said, hey, I want to put my fence on right-of-way property that belongs to the city, there would be some safeguards, I think, in there for the city. So I'm not saying how much you have to charge or anything, but I think you always want something in writing. So, and anyway, that's just some of the observations I made when you guys were talking about this stuff. So,
I have a question. When you were talking about getting all of this money in the cities, are you talking about the cities pooling some of the money we get with the county to do what?
Yeah, well, like for example, if there's a project, you guys got a project going on right now, right, for your sewer, and it sounds like you guys are in pretty good shape where you've got some money coming in matching. But say that project costs another, $500,000, and you say, you know what, we just don't have that much money. So what we could do is the county could support that project, and then you'd also be able to apply for some extra funding through some grant opportunities. And they're going to look and they're going to say, because whenever the legislators get together, they score every project. And that's kind of what we're going to do. We're going to try to prioritize. And then if we can say, okay, county's going to kick in $200,000, and you guys are going to kick in, say you only have enough money for 50 or whatever it is, and then we're going to go to that outside source. We'll go to our legislators and say, hey, we've got matching here. We've got two different parties, the county government and the city, willing to put some skin in the game, so to speak. So that's what we're looking for. And Richard had a lot of experience up in Olympia, so he's really good at that. And we actually hired someone with the CARES money to manage that as far as being able to wrangle all those projects together and try to support our cities the best we can. So,
yeah.
But what about the senior center? The senior center, when is that going to open?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. We met. Well, when I say we met, that they belong to there's a nonprofit that runs those. We do support them, but they're the ones that is in charge of. Well, let me back up a little bit. I know there's some of the issues they're having right now is because the building's set so long vacant that they need to be cleaned. And I know they had a lot of volunteers doing that, but it sounds like to me like we through the FEMA grant have been able to access some money to clean some of those facilities. Schools utilized it. So I think right now that's what we're working on to see if we can get them up and going and use the same company that working with the schools to clean them. Same thing with the senior centers. So because there's 5 of them, so they're scattered out pretty good. And until they, and this is what was reported, until they can get those clean, they're not going to be able to reopen. So, and I know that Ron Averill came to us, and I know we're working with them, doing everything we can, but making sure that we can support however we can as far as, because the cleaning is going to take some money, but we've got some more money through FEMA that we're going to be able to access for that.
Okay.
I can't tell you when, though, because it's really it's not us. I mean, we're doing everything we can to support, but at the same time, it's run by the nonprofits. The centers are run by an organization. So, yes, they need to be open. I agree. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Anyway, so there you go. More to come. And again, Joe's got my number, and if he ever wants anything, I'll come over and support. But we'll make sure we're going to get Richard over here with the EDC and kind of give you a more detailed report on what that's going to look like.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and the sooner the better. We just got our deposit. We just got our money yesterday, and so we're ready to get moving. And so the sooner we know what opportunities we have, the better.
One thing you did mention on the sidewalks, which I agree. Street lights and sidewalks. I think that's going to fall under safety and infrastructure. So you can wrangle it however you want. You try to reach out as far as you can with those funds. So there will be another one coming down the pike. So we'll see what the disbursement looks like, and we'll be in contact. We're not going to have another mayor's meeting till September. So, but we should have a lot more information by then.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Schnapper. Any other public comment? I don't think anyone else has signed up. So. All right. Last on the agenda, the elected official comments. Elected officials?
So back to the ditch on D Street
The ditches.
and 10th.
So you mentioned that a couple months ago. So we went down there and walked that, and because it hadn't rained in days and days and days and days. So where was that water coming from? If you walk that and look at all the ditches, all the way from the top of D, everyone has over the decades has various drainage from their property going into the ditches. And so you can see all of these drain pipes coming into the city ditches that are underground gutter transportation systems and other various drainages. There's a field that had constant water flowing into the ditch, and it hadn't rained in days. It's just draining off of the hill into the ditch. And if you follow the ditch down, it gets to the point where it kind of levels out for a little bit, and that's where you saw the water. At the end of the ditch, there's this huge concrete,
like a cistern thing.
Pool.
Yep.
And it's on private property, and there's an overflow at the top of it. So it's designed to catch all of this water that's coming down the ditch, and then at the top of this, there's an overflow. And so the water has to get to a certain level before that pool and the ditch, because it's at the same elevation, will drain out underneath the roadway and then down to the Olakwa.
Yes,
so
that's what I was telling you.
So it's operating as designed.
No, it isn't operating.
It's all at
the water is standing there. I don't care what you say or how it's supposed to operate. The fact remains that stagnant water stands there year round, and unless we're flooding, it doesn't drain.
Right. Well, even when it quote unquote floods, it just fills to a point where it can go over that overflow tube that's at the highest point of that pool.
I know, I've been seeing it for
And
years.
so it's designed to hold water back. And I don't know why it's there.
Well, I
I
think they
don't know
put
why
that
it's
in
there.
there years ago to help collect all that
It
drainage
it
off
was
of those things.
it was ancient, yeah.
But something needs to be done about it then, to get all that stagnant water out of there, because, and then you can see where the people on the street have dug down to try to get it to, and it's at different levels now, the drainage ditch from the top of the
I
hill.
think the only thing
down.
you could really do would be to increase the height of the ditch on that side. So re-level it so it's higher than that pool, so that the ditches can drain into the pool. And so we'd have to bring in some dirt to do that.
Well,
And then I worry that it would impact the property owners in that area. So anyway, I did look at it to see what was going on,
Oh.
and we did a pretty
don't
thorough.
we have a city engineer? I see his bills occasionally.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so something's got to be done about that. That just because it's like that doesn't mean it's right.
It is-
Those were done back
It
in
is
God
very
knows
nice.
what year.
It is very nice and green, and there's all that clover
Oh,
growing
yeah,
on the water. It's very
wonderful,
pretty.
Yes, and all the little mosquitoes running around and
So,
everything.
all right, I'll see what we can do. I'll talk to John about it. We might be able to bring some backfill in, as long as there is some room to do that, so we could bring the ditch height up a little bit, so that it could all drain down into that pool. But the water's going to stay in the pool either way.
Well,
This is
that's what I'm
D
talking
Street?
about, the engineer. Why can't,
All the way down by the Ben Elson house.
yeah, it's on that property. It used to belong to Hancock.
Is it for the ducks, that pool for the ducks?
Yeah, but it was actually, I think Jason at one time was actually to help with the drainage off that hill coming down there.
Mhm.
And because they used to have, well, I don't know, Dave said that gate that was up there was actually the city's, and the city used to go up there and maintain that at one time. So I don't know what their property line actually is there. Is that thing on city right away, or, I mean, have you checked into that?
I haven't looked at exactly. It looked like private property.
Well,
I think the
could
kids
be.
are using it right now.
I don't know, but I think the city put that in there years and years and years ago to help drain that water off. But
Yeah, you're right though.
the price is too
There's
high.
40 feet or so of ditch that always has that standing water in it.
Yep,
So.
I think that's kind of a health hazard. And then 10th Street, I don't understand why John doesn't clean that ditch out. What is the problem with that?
10th Street. The 10th Street on this
between
side or
D-
on your side?
Between D and B.
10th between D and the ditch is on what side of the street?
It's on the north side.
Where that wetland is at?
Yeah, that's probably why it's a wetland.
You could ditch it all day long, and it's a wetland for a reason.
The ditch is full. It isn't draining. It won't let it drain. Nobody will touch it. That poor man's lost his property down here because of that. Nobody will clean the ditch out. What is the problem there?
I'll take a look at that one too.
I mean, it certainly runs downhill very well because,
I know we need
you
to be careful, because if we start draining marked wetlands, that's not good. The state doesn't like that.
I mean, property owners would love it.
Well, I don't think that's marked wetland.
There is, yeah, that
It
whole
is,
property.
yeah.
If you pull up the county pat system and look at it and put the wetlands overlay on it, that's one of the wetlands that are in town.
Well,
And that ditch is right next to it.
yes, and that's probably because why it's a wetland, because nobody will clean the ditch out.
I think it's the other way around,
And now
but-
it's registered as a wetland, so is there some way to deal with the county for that? I
No,
just,
I don't think so. We'll take a look at that one. I think I know what you're talking about, but
well, it's been sitting there for years, and I've never understood why that ditch hasn't been cleaned out years and years ago.
okay.
Nobody
That's on
touches it.
10th, you said?
Right.
Yeah, it's on the D Street side where
It's where Kelly's wedding was.
it stops there
Oh,
at
okay.
D. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some open grass, nice maintained grass field back there, and then the rest of it is all
Yeah, if you
wild.
look right where the ditch comes down, that property right in there is just marshland because that ditch is, it just isn't cleaned out.
It's not the ditch's fault, but we'll
I
take
believe
a look.
it is the
we'll-
ditch's
we'll
fault
take a look
because
at
it
it.
won't let the water drain.
Stinking ditch. Sorry, somebody had to say it.
I love talking about ditches.
I love ditches, and I think they should work like they're supposed to.
All right. Further elected official comment?
I'm done for now.
All right. Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned at 7:31 p.m. Thank you, everybody.